Please hit like, share, and subscribe. Now enjoy the Practical Guitarist podcast.
We've been muted for like a minute and a half now. That's my fault.
Leave it in.
Yeah. So, no big deal. We're doing our first live stream broadcast thing, and that's a big part of this. I'll clip it before we put out the audio podcast. But basically, this is the first time we've done a live broadcast. We're going to be monitoring chat and stuff, and there's going to be some technical glitches. We know that we got to make a move so that we have this as an opportunity for us to branch out and get some audience participation in the podcast. Obviously, it can't always be Jim and I being talking heads and total idiots. So if you do notice anything technical going on and you're watching, like, for example, somebody's quiet or whatever, let me know and I can make adjustments on the fly for that.
Join in on the idiocy. That's what I say.
Yeah. So, and the other thing is, if somebody's watching us live, they can always go back and like watch the earlier part of the episode and then catch up. So, it's just a different way of approaching how we consume content, I guess. I've been doing live streaming on Twitch for a while, so I'm no stranger to this. But I need to get a couple more buttons on my Stream Deck for muting and that kind of stuff. So, that all said, it is Memorial Day. Everybody should be having a great day today. Maybe you're watching us while you're out grilling or whatever. That thing. And if not, then you're probably listening to us just after Memorial Day. And hopefully you got some good sales. There's some stuff going on this weekend, but, of course, we're still in the middle of a massive recession. And there's not much deals to be had right now in general.
No, I noticed that.
So, I did get some new stuff this week. I got a couple of capacitors to put in my, so I finished my pedal sitting here. So I finished this guy.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
And, it has a cap where the leg is separated on the inside of the cap. So when I'm pushing on it, I can get it to work right. So I know I got to replace that, and I needed to put a new LED in it because one of the LED legs broke while I was assembling it. So once that's done, it'll be all good to go. And so far,
pedal?
It's not my first pedal, but so far it holds up because when I turned it on, I go, "That's a King of Tone circuit." Like I was like, "Yeah, that's definitely very similar to what I already have, what I already rely on." So I was quite excited when I pushed the button and it came on, and I was like, "That sounds correct." Even if it was direct into my DAW with no speaker emulation or anything like that, I sort of knew like this is what this is supposed to sound like. And then yesterday I went and I got a Dunlop. What the hell do they call these things? The Volume X Mini, which looks like that guy.
That's a good little pedal. Yep.
Yeah, so
I might add that to my Kemper.
It's supposed to be a volume pedal, but you can use the auxiliary out, and there's dip switches on the inside, so you can set it so that you can use it as an expression pedal, which is exactly what I'm doing with the. I've got it plugged into my Vibe machine. Now, I'm going to share a little bit about this whole escapade because I got this and I was thinking I'm going to get 2 or 3 of these and put them on the board because I can line them up and I can control the 3 different things that have expression output on my board. And there were reasons like why that made sense to me. I want to be able to do two presets with the Maris Mercury 7. And then I was going to have a third one for volume control on the Amp 1 used in the loop, not for my delay llama. Now, this is where things get complicated because I was thinking, oh, well, this should work no problem. But then I got to thinking about it and I was like, well, wait a minute. If I actually plugged this one into the Maris and I set up a preset and I went, wait a minute. It's supposed to be able to do like the warping thing like the Kemper does. And it does, but you can't use both modes. So it's got a that particular reverb pedal has a plate mode and it has a cathedral mode, which is more like your churchy reverb. And you have the ability to morph between 2 settings of the plate mode or 2 settings of the cathedral mode, but not plate and cathedral. And I'm like, well, hell, I was just going to use it as a preset anyway. So for me, I'm like, this doesn't really make a lot of sense. So I get the manual out and I start digging through and I go, how do I get simple preset control? They have a 4-button foot switch that's proprietary from Maris that you can use. Or you have MIDI. And so that means you have to use a MIDI controller, basically. Because look, you might buy the 4-button foot switch from Maris, but here's the issue: if you need 4 presets, like it's a big use of space on your board for a simple reverb pedal with 2 styles of reverb on it. Like I could see that for like a Big Sky, but this is kind of not. I would rather just have an expression pedal input that also does a 2-button foot switch and MIDI, right? Those 3 functions would be the best way to do it. So get this. It only has 16 presets. So it's like, what were they thinking? I mean, you got a MIDI device where you're basically going to be using MIDI, and you didn't put 128 because there's 128 program changes in a bank. So you didn't put a bank in it? Like, you didn't even put a full 128 presets in it, which is kind of bonkers to me. In this day and age with the cheap, with memory being as cheap it is and all that. So I'm like, all right, whatever. I put the MC6 back on my board, which allowed me to do away with the need for 2 volume pedals because I can use the MC6 to toggle presets on the Amp 1, and I have one preset that's just set slightly louder than preset. So I have 3 presets. I have clean, dirty, and then lead, and then dirty and lead are actually the same sound with just the second master volume turned down on the first 2 channels. So once I have that all set up, then it's, then I'm off the races. But that means I have to add more stuff to my board. I mean, I have to run MIDI cables underneath. But I don't necessarily mind that so much, and I don't really plan on having like a bunch of MIDI presets. Just literally like this one preset that controls this, and basically nothing else. At some point, I would like to also control my Beat Buddy and Looper off that same
the
MIDI foot switch, but I don't think that's going to happen right now. If I actually, the long-term plan is probably to go up. I'm on a Voodoo Lab Medium right now. Is probably to go up to a Voodoo Lab Large, just so I can have. I'm going to get the MC8. I'm going to get the big guy, and then I will have the switcher probably mounted underneath the board, which means I'll have to raise the board probably 2 inches or 1.5 inches, the whole board. So I'll have to put new feet on it and spacers. But then I'll raise the board like 1 inch, 1.5 inches, and I'll put my switcher underneath, and because it's all MIDI programmable anyway. And once I get that all set up, then I'll just hit presets to turn pedals on and off in the thing like I was doing originally. But this time I won't. I'm not going to probably end up going overboard with it. It's more or less just so I can have the 3 sounds that I use plugged in, and then I'll still have the King of Tone always on, and my dry pedals always on. I haven't decided exactly how I'm going to use it yet, but that's kind of what I'm thinking is like, well, then I can sort of vary things a little bit more, and use that MIDI controller. I can use a MIDI out on there because it'll have 4 potential MIDI out jacks that I can use to run to something else and control it off the same foot controller. Because that's actually what I'm thinking, is like this board will be really versatile then. Even if I don't end up doing the ML5 switcher on there, it will allow me to control external devices such as, in this case, it'll be the looper setup I have with one MIDI cable instead of having 2 completely separate MIDI rigs that don't talk to each other, which is kind of what's going on right now. So, another thing, I had a rehearsal yesterday and floated the idea, because we don't have a drummer. I was like, I got all these drum tracks we created in Cubase, and I said, I have the RC600. I said, we could conceivably, until we get a drummer, play to the tracks. And I was like, it'll be cheaper than hiring somebody for every gig. Because we were talking about hiring somebody, paying them for 2 rehearsals or 3 rehearsals, and then...
Right, and then bring them in.
Yeah, well, then I'm like, but then you have to hire rehearsal space, and like that becomes a very expensive proposition to have a hired gun drummer. You could be spending, $600 just to get them to where they can play with you, and then you have to cut them in on the gigs too at a certain rate, which is probably going to be more than what you're taking out. Which that's a challenge. So I don't think we're actually going to be approaching it from that perspective. I think we're going to try to use the looper. I think the looper makes more sense for what we're trying to achieve. So I see that we have 2 watchers in chat. No questions. So did you have any other general news? I know you were talking about, and well, by the way, we are on general news. I had the wrong LED lit up. Did you have anything? Because I know you were talking about something pre-show.
So it seems that the person who bought the 3rd prototype for Randy Rhoads' Flying V from Jackson is selling it, and he is, I never heard of him. I'm not saying that he's not good or anything like that. I've just never heard of him.
Right.
And so he's selling it, and the provenance of the guitar is that it was built for Randy Rhoads by Jackson back when Jackson was only building one-offs, right?
Yeah,
And,
Grover Jackson, not just the company,
right?
Not just the company, like the actual
not just
dude.
The company Jackson, the actual Grover Jackson, right? So it does have that provenance in it, and it was intended for Randy Rhoads, who sadly passed before they had a chance to give it to him to even look at, much less try to play, and it wound up being a NAMM showpiece, and someone accidentally sold it. And they sold it to a dealer that sold it to this guy, who has had it ever since. So he is the one owner. So he's got that. So he's got one owner. I'm giving the real provenance. He's got one owner. It was built by the real Grover Jackson for Randy Rhoads, sold accidentally, and put out there in the market. Okay. And Grover Jackson tried to buy it back, allegedly. This is this guy's words. Grover Jackson tried to buy it back. The guy wanted to keep it. He was a big Randy Rhoads fan. Played it for, 40 years? 30-something years? Okay. So now it's going to go, it's got to be, 40 years or more. So now it's going up on the chopping block. And I understand all those things, but a $250,000 price tag, I don't get, because I do get everything else, and I can see it being a high-end RR3, because that's what it is. But a $250,000 RR3, I don't know. I just don't. I don't see that. Do you see that as a likely sales number? And I'm not talking about for you. I mean, obviously for me, if it was $2,500, I wouldn't want it. But that's because it's me, and that's not my thing. I don't like those little mini Vs. They don't feel comfortable.
It seems to me that other prototype guitars for more prominent designs have sold for less money.
Right.
It seems to me that this price is inflated.
Right.
But I know that there is a legion of people where the Randy Rhoads V, which is it's an offset V, right? It's not really actually all that much smaller. It's just offset.
Yeah.
Where a Randy Rhoads V, like, I could see somebody being like, I want the prototype because that was supposed to go to Randy and it never went to him.
Right.
I can also see somebody being like deeply invested in that design and being like, I want to be the guy that has the one that's the one prototype that's floating around. Because I don't think the other two, I think the other two still exist, but they're not. They're like in Grover Jackson's private collection or something.
Correct. Yeah, right.
They may even be owned by Fender at this point, because Jackson itself is owned by Fender now, which is pretty wild when you consider that Jackson and Charvel ended up being owned by Fender. Both of the companies sort of responsible for the guitars of the 80s along with Kramer, and two of them ended up in Fender's portfolio. So I always thought that was kind of a weird situation over there anyway, but I actually like the look of the Jackson V, specifically the pinstripe one, the white with the green, like it's like a green pinstripe. But it's just not a guitar that really fits the aesthetic of what I'm trying to do most of the time. So it's not a guitar that I will wind up purchasing at any point in my life, but I've played a couple of them, and they're okay. I mean,
yeah, this one doesn't have the pinstripe. It's a white with gold or brass hardware. And it's got the shape. It's got the elongated top bout there that goes way back. Kind of Explorer meets a V, right? I mean, don't get me wrong. Like I said, it's not a bad aesthetic. It's just like I'd be the wrong person to call if somebody said, "Hey, we've got this Dimebag Darrell."
Right.
I respect everything Dimebag Darrell ever did, but that guitar wouldn't be something that personally I would play if it was, Now having Dimebag's own guitar might be cool, but to have one that was built, maybe it's a museum piece. Maybe that's the objective.
That's what I was going to say. Like, this is clearly one of those things where it's got a historical value attached to it. I just question whether this is more valuable than, say, like a prototype Strat.
Right.
Which those have surfaced before, and those do go for decent amounts of money, but they're not touching stratospheric prices like $200,000. I mean,
right. And staying in the same kind of vein. So, one of the guitar players that does one of these instructional channels, I can't remember which one, but his name is John McElhaney. He's really good. When I say really good, I mean top tier, right? Played with Robin Ford. He's the kind of guy that, I can't carry Robin Ford's guitar case. He would say, "No, you're too untalented."
I could play Robin Ford's chords because I took his chord course, but I don't know that I necessarily could play any of his leads. In fact, I was learning to play "Talk to Your Daughter," and I was I got through like the first lick or two, and I was like, "No, I can't even." It's not that I couldn't learn it. I was just like, "This is too much effort." I'm like, "We're not going to do this today."
So John is talking about he bought a '64 Strat, which I'm like, because that's my birth year, right? That I don't know if John McElhaney, he looks like he might be a '64 guy, but he might actually be younger than me. Anyway, he bought a '64 Strat, which for most people, and I think that was the reason McElhaney went with it, that's that transition year. That's the CBS, pre-CBS year. And I've been looking at '64 Strats for that reason. But what shied me away from them, and that's even back when they were $8,000. Now they're like, a cheap one is $19,000, right?
Yeah, well, Reverb says they are anyway.
Yeah, and I could probably get into one for 12 to 16, I'm sure, but
probably.
There was an Olympic white one. I was like, I could put a mortgage in it. But anyway, so literally, I was thinking that. But anyway, so I'm,
Jim, if you buy a vintage guitar over $10,000, I'm personally going to show up at your house and kick your ass.
Yeah,
be like, what the hell are you doing?
Inner me was sitting there kicking my ass.
Yeah, it's like, what the hell are you thinking? I could buy a '64 Strat if I sold everything else.
Right, and that's what I was thinking. But then I would have a guitar I didn't really like, And it would be so expensive. I'd be afraid of everything.
Well, that's the thing.
wouldn't
Like, I
care
wouldn't even
about
want to take it
things
out
and-
and play it at a show because it's like there's too much risk of me knocking it off a stand and having some catastrophic repair that then
Right.
causes me to lose $7,000 worth of that tool's value.
Yeah,
And I phrase that way for a reason.
yeah, and that's what I'm sitting there thinking, if I buy that guitar, it is for me. It's not for my kids. It's not for my future. But see, McAlee, I don't know how to say it correctly. Anyway, John was saying that, it's this piece and, and so on and so forth. And of course, he's got an inside track to people that would sell him, because he's got Robin Ford's folks, who would sell him a decent guitar for decent money and so on and so forth and everything else and blah, blah, blah.
Right.
Okay. I get it. He probably was into it for, I don't know, it's really, really good shape, but he did a lot of work to it. It had, rusty strings and everything else, and he saw potential in it, and he changed it. But I heard him playing it, and I'm like, and I even hooked it up to my studio monitors I've got here, and I thought, man, there's a guy down that I go to open mic with who gets that kind of sound through a katana from an Olympic White 2008 standard American Strat. And I'm like, I don't hear it. I mean, maybe in the room and maybe in the right circumstance and all the other stuff, but I get it. I get what he's doing. But I get to that. He spent 27, 30 minutes. He doesn't usually make these long videos. He spent all this time. And I'm wondering if he was trying to convince the listener or himself that he spent the money wisely. That's what I was trying to get at, is this video, and I see these videos all the time. I bought this, but it's got this thing, but, it's just like I've done, because I've been there, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I'm that guy, right?
Yeah.
I got a Les Paul Custom that it's like, you got to say, well, there's a reason I spent that kind of money on a guitar, or, the second Gold Top that I got. There's a reason you got it. And so you try to convince yourself. And so you say all these things out loud to convince yourself. And I don't know if we have to convince ourselves that we spent our money wisely. You know what I mean? Is that coming across as a question?
Yeah, we shouldn't be because no, it is coming across. My whole thing is, and this is just the way I perceive it, right? Like, it's not necessarily the model of the universe or anything like that, but you can take any mid-level guitar. I don't care what it is. Mid-level, we've always talked about on the show. Obviously, it's gone up about 20%. It's probably $750 to $1,500 at this point. If you take a $750 to $1,500 guitar and you can make it sound good, that's because you can play well. Okay.
Right.
And realistically, like, you can take maybe even lesser guitars than that and make them sound good by just playing well. And I think a lot of people put more emphasis on buying gear than they do, like, actually learning how to properly fret notes and things. So, like, I went on this whole tirade this week, and this fits in general news. We're working on this recording, and I was doing a part that had me doing some kind of funky picking, and I was like, I was having trouble keeping it in time, right? So I kept going back and forth, and I did like 40 takes of it, and I finally said, I got pissed off. I got one good take, and I finally just got pissed off. I said, I gotta learn how to play rhythm. Like, I gotta figure this out, because there's clearly something here that's missing. And so I start watching Tomo Fujita, which if you've never watched that guy play, but it's so funny because if you watch like his instructional material, especially the stuff he even just posts on YouTube, like, he breaks things down and they're super simple to get where he is, but it's just like, you got to do this a lot and this is what you're going to do. And once you realize, like, that it's really just about the fundamentals, you start thinking about the other parts of it, right? Like, how many other things was I trying to cheat because I didn't have the proper fundamental? And of course, I've been doing this 20 years, and I can do some of the little bit fancier stuff. And my whole thought process in the last 5 years, whereas most of my achievement has been, is kind of like, I just buckled down and learned the fundamentals. And I think so much of that gets obscured by people going, well, my guitar doesn't sound right, or I don't have the right amplifier. If I was going to buy a vintage piece, Jim, I'd buy a vintage amp. I wouldn't buy a vintage guitar. I think
Same here.
I think a vintage guitar is a terrible idea because in terms of your sound, like that. When I pick up a guitar, I don't care what guitar it is. Yeah, the guitar does impart a big sonic fingerprint on what I do, but you're gonna hear me, and like they're gonna hear me more than you're gonna hear the guitar, because I'm gonna play the same patterns. I'm gonna use the same kinds of techniques. When I play my PRS, I don't play it like my Strat, but I'm trying to achieve the same things. And one of the things that I got from Tomo Fujito, he was talking about how you practice and your practice environment. And he said, when you play, always play through an amp. And he said, play through an amp where you can hear dynamic levels. And he talked about, like, he even gave, like, if you're playing through a Fender amp, you want to set it up like this with more treble, because then to get the sound that's in your head across, you're going to back off on the pick. And you're gonna learn how to accent or how to take away that treble using your hands and your pick. And he's absolutely right. Okay. Yeah. And it's one of those things where a lot of people don't get that fundamental because they don't play that way.
I agree. You know what's funny is the guitarist that I play with in Fitch and Company, he brought this beautiful custom Telecaster he just got to the gig. And he's like, I don't know if it's got the sound I want. He hasn't decided what.
Yeah, it's a Telecaster, right? Like, it's totally different than his Les Paul. So
right. And so he's got at the gig, he's got a Les Paul, his Gold Top 50-something reissue.
Yeah, right.
His Explorer Koa reissue thing.
Right.
And of course his Tele. And I said, so why'd you? I looked at the back. I go, I don't see a bender. And I know that's what he wanted. And he goes, yeah, I haven't put a bender in yet. He goes, I don't know if I want to keep it. I go, well, a bender's going to make a complete different guitar. I mean, that thing's going to change it.
It's going to add weight.
And I said, you know what? You're never going to be able to do this guitar when you put a bender in it. He goes, what's that? I go, sell it. Because that bender is going to add value for person A, but it's going to detract value for almost everybody else.
I see Bender guitars sell all the time. Oh, yeah. I would be surprised if he couldn't sell it at that point.
Well, and so he's the kind of guy, he'll go to Glazer to get it done. He won't go
to
right. Bob's B Bender Emporium to get it done. Mm-hmm. So anyway, he's really good player, really great guitar player. And when I get to my gig report, I'll really get into something that was said about us that I was like, wow, I can't believe that was said. But anyway, so we're talking about it. I go, yeah, if you're going to do it, get it done in Nashville. Get it done by Glazer or whoever. And I can't remember who the other guy was that I recommended, but I know it's one of the biggies. And so anyway, we're on stage and we're playing, and we were talking about the pickups, and he goes, yeah, I got this and this. He goes, you know what I realized? And I go, what's that? He goes, I'll buy a guitar and get it set up and do all this stuff. And because he just got some custom T-tops put into the guitar that I was talking about, and he goes, I want it to sound like the last guitar I had. He goes, I get it, and I do all this stuff to it to make it sound like a guitar I already had.
So that's an interesting.
And we laughed because I said, yeah, I always want all my guitars to sound like number one, and I go, and so I'm doing all this stuff to try to tweak everything else.
Just play the number one, goddammit.
And that's what I said. I said, when I could just pull that out of the case.
That's what kills me, right? So like it took me a long time to get to the point where I'm like, no, I buy new guitars because I don't want them to sound the same. Right. Like if I wanted them to sound the same, I just play the other one. Unless I need, of course, unless it's like incident of string breakage or something like that when you're on stage. But like for the most part, why would I want two of the exact same sound?
Right.
And I was actually like thrilled that the Fishman single or the Fishman bridge pickup is totally different than my PRS. Because it's a different thing. Right. It's quite a bit brighter actually. The PRS pickups are kind of dark. Like they have a lot of clarity and cut, but they're dark and they're very MIDI.
To me. Yeah,
so
same thing.
Yeah,
that's what I found. So anyway, I've told you and I've shown you my Les Paul sound a little bit different. Obviously, there's a way I could get my gold top to sound exactly like the other one.
Set the string height.
But you know what? I actually like the fact that they sound different.
Yeah.
And I'm just noticing in the camera, my 335, which gets a lot of playtime, by the way.
Mm-hmm.
My 335 is actually starting to look. You can see it looks worn, like I've been playing it.
Yeah, it's a little faded and stuff, and it's probably just going out to outdoor gigs and all that.
Yeah, yeah. And I took I took my white custom to its second outdoor gig. Played that since I've owned it. I played it last year at an outdoor gig. I played it again this year at an outdoor gig. So it, I'll talk more about that later. But it was a thing to me. I was like, that's why I keep messing myself up. I don't want to talk to what other people feel and why they buy different guitars, but just like you, I buy a different guitar to sound different. And every time I play that Strat, I'm like, this is too different. And I'm like, no, that's why you're playing it, stupid.
That's why you have it, because it doesn't sound the same as your other guitars.
It doesn't sound anything like the other ones. And stop thinking like, I have to make it. No, it wants to be that way, and it should be that way. And it really does sound like a great Strat. And so it's me that has to modify the way I look at my playing and my sound, not the guitar needs to be modified, or I need to put this pedal in there. I need to change this setting. No, it is a different thing. It's just like having harmony singers. Mm-hmm. If I had 3 of the same people, it would sound good, but it would also sound a little weird. And I'd want 3 different people doing 3 different harmonies. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So, what's that?
So, let's move on. The first segment I actually wanted to talk about was the AmpX Pre-Namm launch. A couple of things to cover here. This is going to be probably a shorter segment, but it's worth having the conversation. So, back in, I think it was 2018, Winter NAMM, Thomas Blug started showing this thing off. Which if you have your YouTube window up, you'll be able to see over on that screen. This is the AmpX, and what he was toting was like, I have a completely configurable amplifier that can be all these different amplifiers in one box, and it's all solid state with a tube power amp, or a tube in the power amp, a tube I would call a tube buffered power amp, and then it'll have digital effects that can be reconfigured to sound like any digital effect on the market. It'll have overdrives that are actual analog overdrives and boosts that are reconfigurable and can sound like any overdrive or boost that you can think of, for the most part. Obviously you can't. There are certain things you're not going to be able to do. What's that? You got that whammy-alike pedal, the
Bigsby.
The Bigsby. What's the name of that company again? The company behind it?
Game Changer
Audio. They have the plasma with the plasma overdrive or whatever. That's like, you're not going to make a plasma overdrive in the AmpX. That's not going to happen because there's no plasma coil in there. But it's it's configurable. Like that was the whole thing. Is like, Kemper does it digitally, and they allow you to capture your rig as it is and then replay it. And then he, of course, pointed out that like Fractal has the same thing, where they have these digital approximations of real pedals that people are using, and of course, Line 60 has that as well. So the idea of having this analog version of that, which is loud enough to be a real amp and do the things like a real amp does, is a significant boon. So I'm going to show that picture again for a second. This is what was announced back in 2018. He actually had a little box that looked like this, and it wasn't really clear if it was working or not. And I don't know that he actually showed anybody it working, but apparently there was a working prototype behind the scenes that had, instead of digital control, it had analog control, so they could turn knobs to make it sound like different things. And they have since breadboarded the shit out of it and actually made a working digital prototype. So you got analog components that are being linked up with like digital pots essentially, and digital switching that allows them to do all these fancy things. Now, he said he was going to launch this, and that's part of the reason why I want to have this conversation. He said he was going to launch this at NAMM, which is this coming week. But he did a live stream early, and he showed it off. So he did show some audio clips too, and he showed the drive pedal emulation. And if you haven't watched his channel, there's a live stream thing. You can go watch the last one where he unveiled the AmpX. And I gotta say, I was floored because he had drive pedals in a loop master, like the Gig Rig Loop Master, and he had the Amp1 breadboard sitting next to it, and they would go over to the breadboard and do something, and then they would hit the switch, and it would be identical. And he would like hit a chord, let it ring out, and like turn the thing on, and you wouldn't hear any difference. So it would swap between the real pedal and the Amp1, and then he did it with a couple of different boosts. And there were some other interesting pedals that are probably going to be part of a video demonstration later that were sitting on the table, like a Vertex, the Steel String Singer, their SSS clone, the pedal in a box. And so like, if he's able to do that and literally take pretty much any overdrive circuit that you can buy off the shelf that's using conventional componentry, like that's a shoe in right there. I mean, nobody can do that in the analog domain. And quite frankly, even like things like the HX Stomp and Helix, which have these loops that you can patch in your analog pedals, there's compromises. I've shown people, hey, there's issues with impedance matching in those situations, and though they work, they're not perfect, right?
Right.
So just going back and forth about this, he launched the new one. Now, the new one is quite different. He has actually made some modifications, and we might go back and forth between these to sort of compare. That's the rear panel. We want to look at this. This is the front panel. That looks quite a bit different than this. Okay. That's a big change. More knobs, more settings. You can notice that the X controls now have little displays to tell you what the controls do instead of being statically assigned. There are MIDI learn buttons right on this unit. The location of the tube has changed. That looks like a USB-C plug as opposed to a mini B. I think it's mini B. And then he's got headphone port, and I believe that's an aux in on top of the unit. Cool. So that front panel flips down and actually covers all that stuff up, so you don't even have to look at it during live performance, which I know people think that's like a gimmick, but honestly, that for me would be a big thing, because I'm like, I don't want to have to mess with all the, like, look at the damn amount of controls on this thing. I mean, it's panic inducing.
Incredible.
Yeah.
So that's what I'm turning to when I'm looking this way, guys. I'm looking at,
yeah, he's got YouTube up so you can see it. So look at the master. Look at the master next to the reverb, right? So like the master used to be on the Amp1, it was up above. It was a whole different like layout because it was connected, I believe, directly to the power amp, and it's clear that they're digitally switching it now. If you look at the controls, you'll notice this one also has a presence control.
No kidding.
Which the original Amp1 did not. And they actually, he commented about that and said there was no more room for a presence control on the Amp1 board. So we would have had to expand the size. You'll also notice that foot switches, we have 6 now. Part of the change between what he showed in 2019 and what he's showing now is that they have widened it. Okay, so if you look, it's clearly wider. And he did that because he wanted to make sure that people had enough space to get their boot on there.
Well, now I have to get one of these. I'm literally, I am, because you and I both had the Amp1.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And I got to tell you, I've been thinking about going back to the Amp1. This little guy might be the direction I go.
Well, we're gonna talk about price and stuff at the end of this, and some of the little what the hell is this?
Nuances.
Yeah, because there's some stuff in here that I'm like, really? And there was one thing he called out, and we'll see if you can pick up on it when I show you the picture of the rear panel. So here's the rear panel, and this is quite a bit different than the Amp1 was. You can see that there's an input jack, a control like a controller jack, and then there's a send and return. These are all 1/4 inch, right? There's a line out jack, which looks like it's a stereo line out. If you see that little icon above it with the Venn diagram, that's usually used to indicate stereo. So if you do TRS, you can probably split it out to dual mono. That's my guess. And then there's a remote jack, which is interesting because we already have a control jack, right? So what's that? I think that's also a MIDI in. That's what it looks like. So you can take the MIDI 1 adapter and plug that in there, and then the power amp thing is, so it's like there's a MIDI out, right? But what that MIDI out actually is, it has 2 pins on it that deliver 500 milliamps of 9-volt power. Okay, now here's why you'd want to do that. Because this guy, you can't see him in the picture I sent because it's covered up by the YouTube thing at the bottom, actually has wings that come out from the side of it. They're thumb screwed together, and then you can stick a pedal on either end, or 2 pedals depending on the size, right, on either end. And that's going to give you the ability to add some of your own spice to the mix, like if you need an envelope filter or something. And we'll talk about why that's important. Then you have your main outs, which are left and right main out. And you have 2 speaker outs, still only 8 and 16 ohm. It is not stereo for power amp, which would have been nice. But I wonder if... we'll wait and see. Because I wouldn't be surprised if the 8 and 16... So if you plug 2 things into 8, that it accepts a 4 ohm tap, basically. And gives you not true stereo out, but you can run 2 cabs off it. It wouldn't shock me. Because that's one of the things that people have been begging for, is like, how do I run 2 cabs with my amp 1? You would have to run 16 ohm, pair them together so you can get down to 8 ohm, and then run it that way, or you got to wire 2 32 ohm cabinets, which I don't know how the hell you would even do that, but I'm sure where there's a will, there's a way. So did you notice the one guffaw here, Jim?
No.
Because there's a major problem with this back panel.
Give me a second.
And he pointed it out because he admitted, he's like, yeah, it was a mistake on our part. We realized it after the fact. And apparently this is the prototype. So this is not like an artist rendering. It's going to be a legitimate problem with the design. Which is those main outs. Yeah, those are female.
Oh, crap.
So they're talking about various ways to fix that because they're combi jacks. So they're 1/4-inch plug and then an XLR plug. Which means that they have to use a female. What they're probably going to do is bundle in
ship it.
Yeah, an adapter. That it might even be like a length of cable that you can use to, because most people are probably just going to use the 1/4-inch anyway. The XLR is a bonus. So you either have to use a male-to-male XLR, or you're gonna use an adapter that goes from
a big whoops.
Male to female. Yeah, it's kind of a mistake, and he admitted it. He said, "Yeah, he's like, this is what happens when we're focusing on other features and we're not really thinking things through." But that's really the only way to do a combi jack.
Yep.
If you think about it, like that's the only way they could have gotten away with that.
Yeah, because it's kind of a, even though it's a oops on one side, it's an upside to the other, because if you're going to go 1/4-inch, you don't care.
Yeah.
If you're going to go XLR, you care. But if he bundles an adapter,
even if you
he's giving you...
Yeah, I mean, even if you go XLR, at least from my perspective, this is a non-issue. But
right.
I know some people will bitch that I have to buy an $8 adapter. I suspect they're going to just throw them in the box.
They're going to bundle them.
Because the price of this thing, that's the one part that they haven't really nailed down. No. I know what it's going to cost. They've already basically said, but we don't know what the street price is going to wind up being on this guy. $2,000 is the anticipated MSRP. $2,000. Now, do I think it's worth it? I think that's going to largely depend on a couple of factors. Number one, the amp modeling is going to be worth it, because I've got the amp 1, and I'll be honest with you, I plugged in my Fillmore the other day, hoping that I would be like, you know what, this amp 1 isn't all that great. And I played with the Fillmore. So this is the scenario. I put the Fillmore on top of my my creamback loaded cabinet, and I was like, man, this clean sound is so good. And then I went over to the amp 1 clean sound. I'm like, man, this is a really stiff clean sound. And then I started making adjustments. And once I started making adjustments, and I realized that some of the sound I really liked out of the Fillmore was coming from the reverb. And when I added my reverb back into the amp 1 and started manipulating the tone controls to get what I wanted, I was like, holy crap, like these are super close. And then I did the unthinkable, and I took my Fillmore and plugged it into the cabinet for the Amp 1, which is that creamback loaded Lone Star I have. And I was like, oh my God, this speaker smokes. But then I thought to myself, I was like, wait a minute. That's what's really going on here, is the speaker is providing the extra edge, you know, that I really enjoy from the Fillmore right in this moment. And I'm kind of like, it's also enhancing the Amp 1. I'm going, they're probably basically equivalent, at least for, I mean, they don't do the same thing, right? So it's the same argument as we were having before about guitars. But like, I preferred the Amp 1 to my, now I think they're $1,800 or $1,900 Mesa Boogie Fillmore, which is just absolutely insane. And it's a $750 or $800 piece of kit. I mean, and it weighs like 2 pounds, and you know all the other benefits you get from it. You don't have to have like another run of power cables and shit live. It's literally 2 cables to get to your amp. And I honestly, like, all the benefits, I can't see myself being anywhere else right now. Even, you know, I've had the Kemper, I've had the Helix, and like the Kemper was good. It wasn't as good as my actual dyed-in-the-wool tube amps. It was good, but because I wasn't using it to the fullest potential, like I was only really using a couple of models, like it just didn't make a whole lot of sense for me to pay that entrance price. And this guy, with its configuration options, it sounds like a good thing for $2,000. However, there are more caveats than just those output jacks on the back. So they talked about the signal chain, because it's not digital. You really can't just like move everything around inside it. I mean, this thing is super sophisticated, but it's not an ES8 because it doesn't have the internal mixer that an ES8 has, which that's what allows that thing to do what it does. It has a very, very complicated internal hardware processing thing that actually reroutes these signals in an analog domain using relays. That's essentially the same as a 32-channel mixer. And they tell you that right in the manual. I mean, you can read about it. So this is not that. What he did say that you'll have the ability to place like all of your effects blocks either before or post the amp, but it's not clear if you'll have the ability to put them between your drive pedals or between your drive pedals and the amp, like where that stage is at. It was like, well, there's an insert point. Okay. So that's why that 9-volt power is going to be so important for some folks, because on this unit, if you want to run an auto wah and you want to run it before everything else, you're going to need to put that out front using that 9-volt power on what he calls the X-Wings. So actually,
X-Wings.
I know. Personally, to his credit, like the engineering processor, the idea of having a modeler that has just like inputs and outputs for putting effects in it was like bonkers when Line 6 came up with that, where they put the four loops. And now it's like, why don't they do that? You know,
Right.
Why weren't they doing that? But on this guy, not only that, you don't have to buy a pedal board. I mean, you can literally just pull the X-Wings out, mount your pedals on there with Velcro, turn the thumb screws and leave them in place, and just carry that. That's your rig now. You don't need a giant board. Now, he also showed, and I don't have a picture of it, the new controller, which is designed so that it can attach to the front of this unit. So in other words, it's not like a separate piece that you're going to put somewhere else. It will literally be additional rows of buttons below what's here already. And given that they have a 32-core processor in this guy, and he said something about we're only going to use 8 cores for this, and you know they got additional cores available, I'm betting that those buttons are fully programmable. That he has got it so that if you want to use them for channel selection, if you want to use them to turn your boost on and off, because you noticed on the Amp 1, the boost switch was labeled boost. None of these have letters on them.
Nope.
Because
I noticed that right away.
Yeah, I think they're going to be fully programmable. He didn't say that, but that's because he said we're going to keep some things secret for the actual NAMM launch.
Yeah, because he's coming to NAMM.
Yeah, no, he's going to make a big deal out of coming to NAMM and showing this thing off. And NAMM is for the smaller merchants now. Like, NAMM is really not for Fender and Gibson anymore. It's for people like Thomas Blue who have a product that they need to get investors and they need to get retailers to buy into. Personally, I think this thing is going to be a smash hit in Europe, where his stuff has already been a smash hit. I think if you're in the Kemper crowd, this is never going to go out of date. I mean, that's the thing I want to point out to people. When you buy one of these products, because it's all analog, it's not like next week there's going to be a better one and you're going to want to dump this one. That's not how, I mean, the digital stuff, that's how that works. I have no desire to sell my Amp 1. If I was going to buy this, it would be in addition to, not in place of. So I'm not even thinking about selling my existing. In fact, what I think I'm going to do is I'm probably going to snatch up the Iridium and I'm going to snatch up the Silver Edition, maybe before I buy this, because it would be nice to have them all. However, they are saying that this has the Silver and the Iridium sounds built right into the board. So
that would be awesome.
If that's the case, then it kind of doesn't make sense to go about it that way. I would probably just buy the AmpX. Because if you think about it, it's like $500 for a Silver Edition, and then it's like another $600. And if you buy used, it's another $600 to $700 for the Iridium. So you might as well just buy, because you're $1,400 or something. You might as well just buy the You might as well just buy the AmpX at that point.
Yeah.
But look, this is exciting stuff. The reason why we're talking about this on the show is because this is a tool that as in people who play, are actually going to be able to use. And we had him on the show, and Jim and I both used the product. Like, I'm very excited about this, and this is flying under the radar for most folks because they're only concerned with Fractal and, Kemper, which I haven't heard any details about Kemper's launch this year. They got some significant stuff waiting in the wings. And I know that from some behind-the-scenes conversations with some folks that work with Kemper. But it's like, none of this stuff has materialized. And some of the stuff's been being talked about for 3-4 years. But I guess, to the same token, the AmpX was in development for 5 years.
Well, I know that, we'll get more into why I care about this, but the latest Kemper software put in some stuff that I'm going to be able to use on stage.
They get to dual amps yet?
They did get to where I can control it from my iPad without having to wire anything.
Is it you have to have a Bluetooth adapter, or do you have to have a Bluetooth adapter, or does it?
No, apparently it's in the stage.
Oh, right, that's right. The
stage
they didn't tell anybody. They slipped a Bluetooth adapter in under the hood, and didn't tell anybody that was coming, because it was just there was a matter of them writing a driver for it, pretty much.
Yep. So that is there. So I'll be doing a lot of stuff with my Kemper this week, and I'll explain why when I get to Gig Report. But that's there.
So right now, if you're on the fence about modeling, before we're wrapping this segment up, by the way, if you're on the fence about modeling and you're interested in dipping your toe into the modeling world without, maybe going full hog and buying an Axe FX3, FM9, something like that. So the FM9 is priced to compete with low-end modelers. I say low end, they're not really low end, but low end professional, right? So like, if you're gonna buy a GT1000, it's $999, right? Although I'll tell you, I've never seen one sold for $999. In fact, I saw Sam Ash marked them down to $575 a year or two ago. And we're blowing them out on some sort of, I think it was a Memorial Day deal. And I was like, really? And then of course, shortly thereafter, the GT1000 Core or whatever came out, and which I understand that's been a better seller than the big guy was. But they just, they kind of hit the mark with those. They missed the mark with those because they didn't upgrade their modeling tech enough. And So, and there were some limitations to the impulse responses. And so at least from my perspective, the entry level modeling stuff, like it starts at about $999, even though you can get a GT1000 for like $750 if you look around or ask around. Once you get into that entry level modeling, it kind of doesn't make sense to me to look at products that are like two grand as in the same light, right? So the FM9 runs the same software as a big guy, but it doesn't do as much, in terms of like can't run multiple amp models at once, or like you run out of DSP early. I don't want to say that because I don't know exactly what the limitation is on the Fractal stuff, but they, of course, then they came out with the FM13 or whatever, which is bigger, and apparently that has less limitations. It's just like the big guy Fractal, and then of course the big guy Fractal now has like the Street Fighter 2 Turbo Edition upgrade that you can get for it, which is, look, if you're gonna buy one right now, I don't think I still wouldn't buy a quad Cortex. You could buy the Kemper Stage. Of course, Kemper Stage is, if you're comfortable buying a 9-year-old piece of tech, that is, by all accounts, missing a few features that people think are going to be coming in an update at some point. And then of course, or you could buy what the Quad Cortex, which came out kind of incomplete and has remained incomplete for 2 years. At this point, it has been on the market for, I think we're in the second year, and it is still incomplete. And I personally, if you were going to do either of those products or any of those, modeling products, I think you'd go Kemper. I think you'd go Helix, which even Helix is now long in the tooth. I would not be surprised to see a new Helix launch in the next 2 years. We've been saying that for a while now. And I know, there are a few people that I talk to regularly who have said, I don't think there's going to be a new Helix anytime soon. They're going to support that platform forever. I am willing to bet. Jim, come on, stay out of the chat.
Yeah.
I'm willing to bet that Helix gets a new iteration, regardless of what people think in terms of, this is going to be around for the foreseeable future. Now, there will be a successor. There has to be, because eventually they run out of processing power. And they've already gotten to the point where all the new updates seem to like kill its ability to do anything. So that's why an analog piece of gear exists, right? So even though this has digital stuff in it, the reality is that the drive models are analog. The boost modes are analog. I'm sure he's going to put fuzz in here. That's going to be analog, because that's what his whole stock and trade is. And then like, if the digital stuff that you don't like in the unit, you don't like it, you don't use it, you patch in your stuff on the X-Wing and you move on. This product is going to last 10 years. That's what I figure in the marketplace. So the Amp 1 lasted, I think it came out in 2014. So I mean, that's on par, right? 7-8 years for a product that has a very limited feature set comparatively to something digital.
And there's really, the Amp 1 isn't anywhere near EOL, so I mean,
no, he's still going to continue producing them.
Yeah, because so that's not something that you would say, oh well, the AmpX is out, no more Amp 1s or whatever. Well, the Amp 1 we didn't like that. No, they're going to still come out.
Well, the reason why they discontinued the original remote is because they need the remote for the new one, and it didn't make sense to maintain 2 SKUs when the new one is going to have all the same features that you can use with the existing one.
Right.
So but I think he did that a little too early, because he's still saying we figure AmpX is going to show up sometime around Christmas.
Right.
Christmas, January. He wouldn't put a date on it, but he was basically saying like, we're going to finalize the design. Hopefully sometime in August, he's going to start actually using it on all his gigs, which he actually apparently already does use it on his gigs. He's going to use it on all his gigs for the remainder, for the next 6 months, and just make sure everything is where it should be, and go through all the pieces of it. And there will be other beta testers. He's got a bunch of guys in Germany that beta test for him. And so we will have that's the one thing you can say about this. You're not going to get a half-baked product like the Quad Cortex was.
Right.
And there's not going to be probably paid endorsements. Most of the AMP1 videos that exist that were like endorsement videos were him going out and sitting with somebody and working through the device with them, because it wasn't an endorsement video so much as I want to show you this. So it'll be interesting to see how that all plays out. I think this is going to be a strong product launch. And I think it's going to have all the bugs worked out, and I don't think it'll be in December. He's saying around Christmas. I think it'll be probably June next year, to be honest. Between February and June next year, at some point in that quarter. That's when we're going to see it, because unforeseen circumstances, we've still got, although he claims that they have all the parts they need, because they've been sourcing throughout the pandemic. I think this thing has been finalized for quite a while. They're working on the software. That's been the biggest challenge, because every time it gets brought up, he's talking about software engineering. And so I think that's where they're sort of at in the development timeline. He did mention that, which some people totally misconstrued. He did mention that it will not have a full complement of digital effects when he shows it off next week. That they will be working on this for the foreseeable future. The blueprint thing, so like adding additional amplifiers to this guy. So like, let's say you want it to sound like a dual rectifier, he can do that. When he rolls out that dual rectifier blueprint, it's not clear whether it's going to cost you additional money. It's probably going to have a little bit of a cost attached to it, but I don't think it's going to be nearly as expensive as everybody's thinking it's going to be, because he basically said, I just need to cover the cost of what it costs us to make one. So he essentially, that's somebody bringing a special amplifier to him so he can sit down and go through all of the details and fine tuning, and then they put it in there. And they're talking about, there's one JSIM 800 that a friend of his has. It's like a really, really good unit, and they want to do that as the first blueprint that they're going to sell. And that the effects and stuff may also be part of that process. So I don't think I think most of the digital stuff will probably be in place by the time it launches, because we're talking choruses, flangers, delays, reverbs, all that stuff is going to be easy for them to bake in. It's the complicated stuff that, like harmonizers and shit like that. I don't think you're going to see that kind of stuff in this product. No. That would be something you would buy an H9 for and pair it up with this guy or something like that. So anyway, I'm going to, we got a chat from Stephen Granger. Well, thanks for blowing smoke up our ass.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Yeah.
We try. It's a process. Take my word for it.
It's nice. Part of the reason why we converse about things that, like, we know not necessarily everybody's a gearhead and all that is because it's nice to know what's out there. When your stuff breaks, sometimes you have to go out and get something else. And you're like walking into the guitar store and being completely blind because you don't go in it but every 5 years. That could be a real problem, especially in today's market. So, anyway, I'm going to flip over to our next topic, which is one you brought up.
Yeah, the old sell on reverb.
Selling the reverb.
So there's a change. I'll bring up the reason I brought it up. So there's a change in what's going on with Reverb. Reverb is going to start offering you a cash buy. Reverb itself, not a buyer from Reverb. Reverb is going to say, hey, we noticed you put this up. We have a reseller that wants to, what it is, the background is they've got resellers who are looking to buy your gear to then resell it for you. So Reverb is acting as a middleman.
Oh my God.
I don't see this. I mean,
Jim, I actually wasn't upset the other night when you told me about this, but when you said that just a second ago, I'm like, you're fucking kidding me, right?
Yeah, so what's happening is Reverb's going to buy your gear. Let's say Chicago Music Exchange wants to sell, let's say, my white Alpine Strat.
Yeah, right,
I mean, my Alpine white Les Paul. So they go and they offer me a certain amount of money. Thanks, Stephen. A certain amount of money where they say, hey, we're willing to take your Les Paul. So they go to Reverb and they go, tell this guy we'll buy it. And then Reverb says, yeah, we'll buy it. We'll buy it. So how much do you think that Reverb's got to make money in the whole exchange? Because Reverb's going to have me ship it to Chicago Music Exchange, but they're going to take a piece of that, that union.
Well, Reverb is always built on microtransactions, right? I mean, that's
right.
I don't think that's concerned about making money in that way.
They're not looking to make a ton of money. They'll make a couple percent in the thing, but it's really, I mean, it's a good thing in that they'll be CME's, thing. They'll, CMA will go, we're looking for Alpine White Les Pauls. We got a hit. Okay, let's offer this person some money so that we can make money on the transaction.
So the other night we were discussing it. The Reverb started piloting this program. I think it was in 2019. It might have been in 2020, where they were buying Fender Strats. They were buying American Standard Stratocasters.
Strats, yeah.
And it was, and I think they had some other stuff too. It was like the 10 highest selling or the most frequent sold items. They started doing that with. So if you're, think about it this way. We all bitch and complain about what Guitar Center will give you when you trade something in. And that was sort of what was going on with Reverb. Although they were not offering like a horrendous, tank amount of money for your guitar. It was not, let's put it this way. You were taking a hit. Okay.
Yeah.
I believe it was basically, I'm trying to think. So it was like probably 80% of the used value of your item, which is, a little bit higher than the 66% that you would get from Guitar Center. So, I mean, it's not, again, Guitar Center is less hassle because you don't have to ship the damn thing or anything like that. And of course, that's the hidden fee of Reverb, right?
And that's the hidden part.
That you have to pay for the shipping part, and the shipping sucks. I mean, you pay for the shipping through Reverb, so you get a rake off on it, but you still got to buy a box, you got to buy packing material, or you have to keep a bunch of packing material and boxes laying around, which is what I do. Which is what I do now. But still, I mean, there's a cost associated with that, and of course, you got to drive to the post office, you got to drop it off. There's a cost associated with that, and so like when you really think about it, look, sometimes you might be better off trying to find a local seller. Or a local buyer, rather. So I've actually been doing a dual prong approach now. If somebody wants to buy it locally, I'm more than willing to do it locally because, in fact, I'll give you a better deal because I know what it costs me to sell it online. So here's where I'm starting to take issue with this. So, like, if they're going to be connecting us to resellers, and the reseller's going to lowball you. Because that's what's going to happen. They're going to be asking for 66% or 70% of the used value. Why would you want to take that if you're already selling on Reverb where you're going to get screwed on the shipping? Yep. You're going to get screwed on, and that some of these sellers are, like, I don't care if it's CME or whoever, some of these sellers are going to be picky about what they're bringing in versus how the condition is described. We've all heard the horror stories about somebody saying that something in good condition is awful. It's a piece of, piece of shit or whatever. And it's not even it's minor issues. But they want a refund or, and they want you to make good on it, which is really just a post-sale negotiation tactic. I want $20 back.
Yeah. I heard a horror story recently about a person who said, yeah, I want some money back because it wasn't set up the way I like it set up.
Yeah.
That's literally one of the complaints.
Somebody bought from a local guitar shop, and I won't say who. Somebody bought a guitar. It's just, they listed it as a very good condition. And it had fretware, but it was a 10-year-old guitar listed in very good condition. What did you expect? It was going to, kind of come out of the, like brand new out of the box? Like, it's 10 years old, you moron. And they disclosed that it was 10 years old in the listing. And it was like some minor fretwear. This is like 20 years of fretwear. This guitar's been rode hard and put away wet. It needs to be refretted. No, it doesn't. It needs a fret job. Go get a fret job done. But the reality is, of course, the buyer has probably got a local tech who's telling him, I don't want to do a fret job. I want to do a refret because it's $350. So
versus $30 or $40.
Right. So then they end up, I don't know how that ended up actually being resolved, but I'm sure Reverb got into arbitration and it became this whole nightmare before it was finally resolved. Which is the fear I have whenever I do a transaction on Reverb, is that I'm going to end up with the dickhead customer.
Right. Remember when I sold my V on Reverb, I was frightened as heck that something, because that was a 30-year-old guitar, 40-year-old guitar. And I'm like, and I had it refretted, but I disclosed the refret and I said otherwise original. And I took all the pictures. But
as long as you document it, you'll be protected. It ain't eBay where they just will totally bullshit you.
Right.
But you know, so now we're opening up Reverb to allow people to take lowball offers from stores. Like, I get it. But you're trying to be what are you? Are you a marketplace for musical equipment, or are you a sales venue for shops? Because that's where I'm at right now. I'm like, do I really want to do business with you if you're going to pick the shop side over mine, which is exactly what's happening right now.
Well, I'm wondering, this is the thing I'm wondering. So I'm wondering if they're replacing Guitar Center, trying to replace the one part of Guitar Center / any other shop that's local. Their ability to take in trades, because most, if not all, guitar shops take in trades by you walking in. And that's the one last venue where you walk in to do it. You present your guitar.
Do you think they have to facilitate that? That's already been going on.
That's what I mean.
That's why I'm like, that's why I said they're screwing the consumer. They're screwing people like you and I, because now we get to let me dangle this cash in front of you, and it's like, we know how musicians are, right? Like, oh, cash. But realistically, like,
money.
I'm just thinking about this whole thing, and I'm like, this was already going on. That, like, I had lowball offers from stores for stuff I had put up, which is why I'm like, no, I'm not going to take that offer. I'm selling this on Reverb because I'm looking to get what it's worth, not what you're willing to pay me for it. And that's, you know, so it's like, you're still going to have to be smart about it, but now you're going to be tempted in addition to being smart about it.
Right. But the problem that I'm presenting here is that you would probably get more money. In that case, you'd probably get more money going to Guitar Center or your other local shop, whatever shop it is. You know,
maybe
Atomic Guitars. I don't know.
Maybe. I mean,
because they're going to take a piece, and then the far end seller is going to take a piece, and the far end seller isn't going to want to make less than 35% or so on a resale. I mean, that's kind of staying in business money,
right? Which is why. Well, I don't honestly think this is going to go anywhere. No. The only time this will be a useful service is when you go into your local guitar shop and you say, I'm looking for this very specific item. Can you get this for me? And they go, yeah, we'll get you one. And they might, because they know it's you, and because of their situation, they might be willing to take a 20% margin on it instead of a 30% margin.
And because they know you're going to want it. And it's that kind of customer, or the really big, again, that's still that kind of customer, the really big ticket items.
Well, the other predatory piece of this is that, of course, we know how hard it is to estimate the shipping cost for something. So, like, I buy rolls of, and in the past, I bought rolls of bubble wrap, right?
Yep.
Which your typical roll of bubble wrap's $10. And I can pack, you know, depending on what I'm packing, like some things I've sold, I had to use an entire roll of bubble wrap to sell it, where that $10 may not necessarily have been reflected in the shipping cost, where I'm like, shit, that sucks. And that's where they're going to get you is, yeah, you might make basically what you're expecting to make for your item, but at the end of the day, you're going to overpay for the shipping, and the store walks out and goes, haha, we got it, and we didn't even have to pay for the shipping.
Yep, that's right. There may be redirects where, you know, because Reverb, when you ship through Reverb, it's really Reverb buying the shipping. So, so the way this works is they then could control the shipping, and they can just redirect that item.
And it is padded, but it's not padded a ton. Believe it or not, I know what shipping costs for a lot of stuff, and like,
Yeah, it's
you
not
can
that
go
bad.
get the real quote from various places, and you'll find out like, yeah, having an account with USPS where you do X amount of volume, or UPS for that matter. I mean, almost every time
Yep.
UPS is cheaper for me. UPS has X amount of volume that goes through there. They get a massive discount,
Right.
and of course they're marking you up,
A little bit.
5%, but it's not much. It really
No.
isn't.
And it doesn't take away from that savings. Because I looked at using UPS directly and using Reverb when I shipped the V.
Yeah.
And to be honest with you, Reverb was better.
Yeah.
So I
By
shipped
about
the V with
10%.
Reverb. And I knew I had that protection through Reverb shipping.
Yeah,
Which is what that little bit is paying for, really.
Right. So when you add on the insurance cost, then it works out to being a roughly equivalent to what you would pay at UPS, but you will not have insurance unless you go through Reverb, like the buyer protection that Reverb offers.
That's right.
And the seller protection. So
Yep.
that's why you'd use the Reverb label. I mean, that is literally the reason you use a Reverb label. So
yeah, and so I did. And as a matter of fact, everything I've sold through Reverb, I have used the Reverb label.
Same.
So the truth is, it's only going to affect people, and this is the thing that I want to take. I want people to take away from this, at least as far as my look at it, is the only people that this takes away from is the people who couldn't. When I went to Reverb, I sold to make more than I would go make at Guitar Center or wherever. Okay, I'm using Guitar Center as a placeholder for local shop. Okay. I didn't use them to make the same or less. And so that was really the reason. And to be honest with you, I don't think that the end user, the end buyer, I should say, makes any better than they would have if they went to local shop, if they could find that item at local shop. I think that it's just the convenience and the fact that they're getting what they want for a little bit less money than they would buy it new, and they're getting it from, through Reverb, where they have some protection. And I think that's a good thing. Now, I will say this. Let's say you've got, because there is a backdoor way to make more money at Guitar Center. Let's say you're looking at buying a Stratocaster, American Pro Strat. What's that, $1,600, whatever.
Yeah.
So you go in and you go, wow, $1,600. I've got a pedal that is like $30. And I take it to Guitar Center and they're only going to give me $15. But you know what? If you're looking to if you take that pedal in and you train it toward that guitar, you just saved $160 on a guitar.
Right.
So, and I've said this before. So that little bit of dump you took on that pedal, you actually make that up by trading it in on a guitar. You get an automatic 10%.
Yeah,
so.
It's a rare instance where you get away with that because you're normally not trading in a super low but I've done that before too because
I've done it personally.
Yeah, and that's one of the only ways to get massive discounts at Guitar Center other than working there now. So there are other ways. I can't say too much, but that's one of the main ones. You can get artist pricing. If you get artist pricing, then you're going to get a discount. Don't ask me how I know.
Don't ask us how we know. And there's another way. Obviously, if you're military, by the way, for us military folks, you get 10% automatically anyway. So it doesn't save me anything. The other thing you can do is if you have someone who is a friend at Guitar Center who works there, you can tell them, hey, I'm planning on buying item A, as long as it's a new item, not used and not on sale. You can get. It used to be 20%. I think they've taken it to 15%.
Yeah, they have like a 15% coupon they can give out once a quarter. Or whatever, or they get like two of them a quarter or something. Is that what it is? Once a month? Yeah, they
get once a month, and then the top tier sellers get more than one a month. Mm-hmm. So it's always nice to make friends at Guitar Center if that's that's something that you're interested in as far as doing, and that's across any new item. So, and I think it's a top of $500. So that's like. That goes up to like the $3,000 items. You can save a lot of money if you're looking at a high ticket item. So that's something to do. Yeah. Anyway, that's all I wanted to say about selling at Reverb selling at Reverb.
Yeah. So just to cap this off, like, for our listeners and viewers, like if you want to make sure that you're protecting yourself, don't compromise your value because somebody dangles cash in front of you. That's the fastest way to get taken.
Right.
And that's my fear here, is that this is really just Reverb siding with business over individual sellers. And they've already gotten to the point where they've started to chase people off with higher fees and everything else. I mean,
Yeah.
hell, the fees went up again this year, and like they're almost 10% now. They gotta be like 11% now. I'd have to look at my last transaction because it's been a while since I sold on there, but I remember going, wait a minute, there's like $50 missing out of my bank account that was supposed to be deposited from Reverb. And I realized and I was not selling big ticket items, which is where I was like, that's messed up. So I, like I said, selling on Facebook, selling on Craigslist is going to become a viable alternative again. And they're gonna cannibalize their own sales. There are already people who were big eBay or Reverb sellers and eBay sellers before that, who have basically said, "Screw this platform. I'm going back to selling over on the Gear page or Craigslist or Facebook Marketplace." And I think some of that will be motivated by the taxes too, because we've already covered that on this episode. But the tax changes just make this much more of a pain in the ass, and the fact that you're going to actually have to pay for tax prep services in some cases to be able to protect yourself, so that you can sell shit on Reverb, is just bonkers. I don't know why the feds think that that's the way that everything should work, but it is clear that
you don't get a tax form from your local reseller. That's what doesn't make any sense.
No, that's my point. Like, I can take shit to my local consignment shop, and I'm not going to get a tax form from them.
I don't understand the take from that. When you walk into guitar, I guess it's because you're selling at a loss. I don't know, because they know you're selling at a loss. But it just, I don't know.
I think wrong. That 1099 thing applies to, it's probably supposed to apply to everybody, but realistically it only applies to online sellers because it's trackable. It's traceable. It has to do with credit cards and stuff too. There's like a whole thing. They're wanting to get the money. They're wanting to get a piece of the credit card transaction. Like that's a big part of the what's motivating this. So we'll move on to goals for 2022. Now, Jim, this is kind of a new topic that we didn't really discuss before the episode, but I think we're almost to the 6-month mark for the show for this year. And I know that we had done some talking about goal setting back in January. And I just kind of like, it's worthwhile now to step back and take a look and do an annual review for ourselves and where we are. So I don't even remember what my goals were. But I have a feeling it was regarding a MIDI programmable pedal board that wound up happening and then getting taken apart. So that was a thing. Do you remember any of yours? Because I actually was just going to set new ones.
It was probably not buying any more Les Pauls. I don't know.
Yeah, it probably was actually. And now you've got what, 2 more, I think?
Yeah. So, well, since the beginning of the year, I've got
2
one
more, 1 less.
One different, so, yeah, 1 less, 1 more. But, all right, so here, I think that the goals that I had, I am actually achieving. Although we're gonna get to the gig report here shortly. I keep saying the gig report. I had a certain goal of working on a lot of my fundamentals as well. I have been so busy playing out. I have been not working on and it's not a good excuse.
No, it's actually a perfect excuse. At least you're playing.
One goal outside of guitar was to lose weight. And I've been losing weight, and I saw a video of myself from last year and then a video of myself from this year at the same place around the same time, and I went, "Yep. It's happening, and it's happening slowly. I get fat overnight. I'm gonna get slim overnight, So I'm not an idiot. I'm working hard at it, and I'm in my late 50s. I mean, I turned 58 this month, so it's not as easy and it's not as fast as it used to be. I can't go out and run 6 miles because I feel like I'm a little chubby.
Right
now, running 6 miles at all, much less. In the amount of time it used to take me. So I used to be able to run 6 miles in well under 40 minutes,
Right.
folks. And so I was a 6 miles, 36 to 35 to 36 minute person. I was an under 36 minute 10K runner. So to now be, which is 6.2. So now it's harder. I get up in the morning, I run and work out for an hour. So that's a big goal that I finally got to, and I do every day but one day a week. Okay, so I work out 6 days a week in the morning for an hour, which means getting up earlier, and because work doesn't care, work wants you to get, So I'm a little bit more. My time is crunched a little bit, and I used to play.
We can talk about time crunches if you want. We could talk about that.
Yeah, and so yeah, you feel it too. And so there's the working on fundamentals. I started finger picking fundamentals and hybrid picking fundamentals is one of the things that I've been trying to do more and more and more. And I think I've gotten better at it, and I'm applying it more. But when you've got a gig every week and it's something that somebody says, hey, like
you don't stretch as much. You try to do it the easy way so you can get through it. Yeah,
I'm trying to get through things, get to things, because I'm learning this song for this weekend, or sometimes 2 or 3 songs for this weekend, and then keeping my fingers up to date. Also, I'm drinking a lot more water. This is just water, folks. And this used to have my name on it. This was obviously not dishwasher safe, but trying to keep my voice, because I sing lead and I sing backup, and trying to keep my voice. And during allergy seasons, that's even harder. Mm-hmm. Matter of fact, I just realized I haven't taken my allergy meds this morning, so I got to do that. It's thank you, Stephen. I honestly am trying to work hard to do all these things to take care of myself physically, because I'm on that stage for 3 hours.
I was just gonna say, that's musical prep. I think people miss the fact that when musicians work out, it's not so they can play sports necessarily. In a lot of cases, it's just so they can perform.
Yeah, if you go to my YouTube page, and there will be more coming up because of the weekend gig I just had. You look at the videos. I'm not standing there staring at my fretboard most of the time. No. I am an active. I go from one side of the stage to the other. I'm interactive with the audience. I have to think, and I have a Les Paul strapped around my neck the whole damn time.
Right.
From start to finish, with the exception of a break. Mm-hmm. I have a Les Paul. Take a weight between 8.5 to 10 pounds, strap it around your neck, and just do the things you do. Right. Do your dishes, fold your laundry, mow your lawn. And the physicality of mowing and weed whacking your lawn, if you did that for all that time, even just that little thing with that thing wrapped around your neck. By the way, I'll tell you a little sea story to get through this. So when I was in the Navy, when I made chief, they made us wear an anchor around our neck the whole workday and it was to show you that the weight of the things you do is around your neck the whole time, and think about that looming around you. It was a lot of people, they made me do this. Shut up. There was a point behind it, and if you didn't get it and nobody would explain it to you, then either you're an idiot or you worked for assholes. But the point that I'm making here is simple. You work hard, and physically work hard. So taking care of yourself is important. And I can't be up there. I can't get drunk. And I'm not young enough to, do that. And I don't imbibe in drugs. So the fact is that I drink water and I exercise and I look after what I eat. I made the mistake of stopping at Taco Bell on the way back home from the gig. And let me tell you something. Sunday morning, yesterday, oh, God, I was paying for that awfully. And all I did was eat 2 gorditas. And I was like, I definitely should have prepped up. I should have boiled some chicken and put it in the fridge to make when I got home. And I didn't. and I paid for that, and I paid for that dearly. I was ghastly sick. So, I'm not. What am I trying to say here? I'm trying to say that it's important to take care of yourself. So that's one of my goals. Working on fundamentals, one of my goals. But getting more gigs was one of my goals.
Yeah,
and guess
you've accomplished that.
we are gigging every freaking weekend, and it's like you're when you have a day job that takes away from you, and I work in the evenings to work on my guitar stuff, and I'm working hard every day to do that. It's a strain. So yes, I made goals, and most of them, with the exception of I actually stayed to 4 Les Pauls. So let's take a win where we can get the win. I still only have 4 Les Pauls. There's a certain amount of everything that you can do, you do right, and you do to make those goals and to continue past them. I think that I'm doing those things. So what are my future goals for 2022? To continue to keep working out every morning, to stay healthy, and to continue to play out, and to I guess to take one little thing that was coming in the gig report, and that was what people said afterwards. You guys were great. We loved you. I would pay to see you guys play. I didn't know what I was missing. Those are the kinds of things. That was the feedback we got this weekend. And that says a lot too. Yeah, we as a band, as a team, are meeting our goals as well. So there you go. That's my goals.
So that's always a difficult situation. Stephen Granger's comment. So because it's an aside to what you were just mentioning. He says, my bass player seems to think it's okay to get drunk on stage. Does my head in, but he's a good player, so I don't want to cause friction. What's your advice? It depends on a number of factors. So like, I don't know the person, but I think being a good judge of character and understanding whether or not this is a real issue for them, and if they are someone you can approach, because that's another thing, right? Like there are some people you can talk to about this thing and be like, hey man, you're a little sloppy when you drank a little too much before the show. Like limit to a beer or two. Like it's okay. Right. That's okay to have that conversation. It's okay to have any conversation. If you feel like, even if they're a pain in the ass about it, you got to sit down and say, look, we're trying to be as professional as we can possibly be. We don't drink before the show because we know that leads to poor performance. Like a lot of people need a drink because they can't handle the stage fright thing. Right. And that part I understand. So have a beer. You can't have 10. Okay. When you're sloppy drunk on stage, it shows. Believe me. Yep. Just think about it. Like from the perspective of next time he's sloppy drunk, ask him to recite the circle of fifths to you and see if he can get through it. And then ask him to give you.
But he's sober though. He might not already know.
And then ask him to go in flat order. Okay. And then he'll realize you have a problem because you're basically saying, look, your musical knowledge is skewed by this, but not only that, you're also giving a field sobriety test, which makes that much funnier. But look, I mean, I play at an open jam every week, and we got people that drink and we got people that don't drink, and you can tell which ones are the ones that drink and which ones are the ones that don't drink. Both, some of them are still good when they're drunk. They're like still the best player in the room. Others are like, holy hell, what the hell are you doing here? So, knowing the person makes a big difference there. If their drinking is getting in the way off stage and on stage, then yeah, it's still something you need to address. Like, for example, if they're walking around the audience on breaks and harassing people, that's something that needs to be addressed, even if they're a great player on stage while they're drunk. Because you can't have that. You're not going to get called back for the gig if he's walking around following the bartender's daughter, that kind of thing, and being a harassing individual. So that's my thought process, is like, when I have this happen, if it's in my band, I will address it. I will actually say something to the person when it comes up.
Yeah, I'll add this. So this applies to any job you have. If the drinking isn't affecting the work, then there's no point in addressing the drinking. Unless that drinking, and it's a good friend, and you want to give advice that, hey, this is affecting your health, that's a different thing altogether.
Yeah.
But when it comes to work, you got to remember, being on stage is work. It's a job.
Yeah.
And you want to be professional.
There's a camaraderie there, but it's not necessarily friendship. It can be a job. I definitely know people that like play with people that they play with. They're not,
Right.
Like they don't hang out with them on the weekends. You
Right.
know.
Now I happen to be in a band where we are friends, but we're also professionals. So let me say this. So if the drinking is affecting the playing, then it is something that should be addressed, regardless of how difficult it is to cause friction. At that point, it is necessary to address it. But it is also important to remember the purpose of what you're saying, and not to attack the human, attack the action.
Mm-hmm.
So, in other words, the conversation could be, I always tell people it's important to choose the words carefully. If you're going to say to someone, you're a drunk when you're on stage, now you've attacked the individual.
Yeah, you have to have a tact when you have that conversation, for sure.
I would appreciate it. Another way to say it would be, if drinking is affecting your ability to play well, or drinking is affecting your playing, now you're saying it to say, okay, now I'm attacking what it is, the action, the playing. Like we were when we had our gig, I had one beer and I didn't finish it. I actually had it on the side of the stage and had a couple of sips off it every now and again. It was literally that couple of sips will take the edge off. For me, I'm a different person. I don't need a lot to take the edge off. But I also know that if I had finished that, if I had just hit it or drank it, I knew where it would affect me. If the person is not self-aware enough to know that it's affecting their playing in a negative way, or their ability to interact with all of you or the audience in a negative way, then they're not self-aware enough to be a part of a team, because it's all a team and you're only as strong as your weakest link. And I raise my hand every time. I know that I'm the short fat guy over on the to your left, stage right. And I know that the only thing that I can add to that is I'm a little bit comical. I'm the class clown. And I'm the person who just runs around playing guitar hard. And so that is what I add to the stage dynamic. But if I was drinking, I don't think that I would add that, because I'm also the timekeeping rhythm player. I do play some leads, but I am the timekeeping rhythm player, and the high harmony and the singer that I am when I do sing lead. So I have to know that those are the things I bring to that team that they need from me. And if I don't bring those, I'm not going to be the one that people say, hey, good job. We really love you. We would be willing to pay to see you. And that's, our lead singer is the good-looking guy in the middle who has a baritone voice that the ladies love. And
I would be remiss if we didn't point this out. There is another non-confrontational way to deal with this too.
Mm-hmm.
Start video recording your performances.
And then just point out, ask, what,
are you drunk?
No, you could say, what happened right there? What
yeah.
You don't have
Start
to say,
drawing attention to the fact that.
What did you do? Just say, it was something I heard right there.
Make it about the performance, right? And not about the drinking, and make them draw that conclusion.
Our lead singer, band leader, will say, what do you think of this right here? And I know I'll go, yeah, my harmonies were off. Or I'll go, yeah, my rhythm was a little tough right there. Or, yeah, I didn't get back to my mic in time. Those kinds of things are things that we will do afterwards, and it's, oh yeah, I was a little loud right there.
It'll cost you $200 for the Zoom Q2N 4K, which I just bought. And it's going to be an indispensable tool for this kind of situation. And not just an alcohol situation, but just like knowing where your faults are, right? And I've even been recording my practices at the house because I want to know what I need to work on. So I, review a few minutes of it, and after I'm done, and I go, oh, well, okay, it's clear what needs to work on here.
It never lies.
Yeah.
I got to be honest with you. It can also say positive things.
Yeah,
Steven.
because
what's cool is I recorded our gig this weekend, and because I wear IEMs, okay, and I'm on stage, I don't have an amp, and let me tell you, I watched the recording back, and I go, man, we were actually pretty good. I was like, wow, that sounded better than I thought.
Yeah. It's nice when it captures something good that you didn't realize was like as good as it is. So there's at least 2 times I can remember playing a solo on stage. I was like, man, I wish I had a camera rolling, because I was like, that was really good, and I'd love to listen back and like figure out what I did. But yeah. So that would be the way I would do it. So back to the goals for 2022. So you talk about personal goals. I'm pretty sure that I did have that gear goal of finishing that off. I accomplished that, and then I basically just violated my own rules and said, to hell with this, we're doing something else. Because it didn't end up being what I needed anyway. But in terms of personal goals, I wanted to learn more theory this year. And I'm well on my way. Like, I'm focused now. I have a better idea of what I need to learn. I've been going back and forth with a couple of different people and asking questions and learning things as I go. And I know most of the stuff that I'm coming across, but it's organizing it in ways that are meaningful and useful, if that makes sense, or maybe codifying some of it. And that's been extremely helpful. The codifying part of, understanding some of these things, and also like being able to, since I'm doing this recording project right now, being able to like go over to a piano and play it on the piano. Like, it's very helpful, and without actually thinking about being able to do that.
Right. It makes you think in a different way. That's what I like about doing the keys.
So that part is coming along, right? I know I had a thing about getting an album out this year, an EP this year, and we're almost done. We're on the last few songs. And it's been kind of the last 2 songs are going to be pretty bitter, hard fought battles to get all the way through them, because there's a lot of stuff that has to be right, to make them work. And, so we're going to get through that process. We're hoping to be done by June 15th with tracking. I'm talking to some people for mixing. We're talking to Stephen Miller. It's going to be one of the people that we're going to go to and see, see what is available there, whether he wants to even take the project on, because I'm not a great player, and and I don't really want to have him do all this fix and the mix shit and spend a bunch of extra money. So just depends on what he's comfortable putting his name on.
He's a friend of the show.
Yeah,
he's been on here a couple times.
He's been on here twice, and he's an excellent engineer / producer. I would call him a producer as well. And if you're looking for that kind of service, definitely look him up. I showed him to my co-writer, who's got connections to several local studios here, and I was like, listen to this guy's work and tell me that you don't want him to mix our thing. And he listened, and he was like, okay. Like, you twisted my arm, it's like, you twisted my arm. That whole experience, by the way, we've been shopping around here, and there's been some guys that we were just like, you're going to engineer our project, because there's one case where this person's got quite a bit of credits under their belt, but like every guitar sound in their demonstration catalog was like the same guitar sound. And it's like, well, hell, I know what I'm going to sound like, like, that's not, no, I don't think we want to do that.
Exactly.
So not for a guitar-based band where the guitar is, along with the vocal is the feature. And,
be consistent.
So we're, that's not going to work for us, but, in terms of additional goals for the remainder of the year, I'm not setting a goal to not get an Ampex or get an Ampex. I don't think the Ampex will actually debut this year. I think it'll be next year.
Yeah, probably next year.
I think I don't need any more guitars this year. I don't need any more, like, gear in general. I'd rather use what I have and learn to use it better. I would like to, and I think I actually said that in January. I want to make sure that I'm not carting around a bunch of extra crap that I don't necessarily need. I do have things that have, like, I'm going to keep them because at some point I am going to use them. Like there's BB preamp, stuff like that. I do still use that stuff. But my boards are slimming down. I have 5 pedals in addition to the amp 1 on my board. That is my board. That's what it's going to be. Unless you can count the MIDI controller and the expression pedal. But just kind of like getting things more professionally laid out. I'd like to get some gigs going by the end of the year. That's something I'd like to add on to this. Because we have been so focused on this recording project. I thought we were going to be done in like May, March, April. Because we started in December. And it is just one, punch in the gut after another of me getting sick, or I hurt my back at one point and couldn't play for a couple of days. I cut my finger and couldn't play for a couple of days. Stupid nonsense that has been holding us back and has pushed this thing back as far as it has. And I think both Tony and I feel like we don't want to push this too far. Like, we would rather make sure it's done right. And so we're taking our time with certain things, which if we were under like a production schedule where, we were going to get paid for this, we probably wouldn't be doing that. So that's part of the reason it's taken basically 5 months to get this done. But we're also doing a full, it's almost a full length album. Because, an EP is only supposed to be like 30 minutes long. We're probably pushing, because I know we got a 7-minute song, and I think the next one's also a 7-minute song. So with those 2 plus the other 4, I think we've actually just eclipsed like a 30-minute playtime. So it's not really a full album. I mean, it is an EP. Let's be real about that. But it could very easily have been a full album at this point. And so, like, just to shed some light on that process for people tuned in, we did demos of every song that could have been released. And we did more than one of most of the songs. And then we kind of batted the ball back and forth writing those tunes by doing demos. So at this point, every song in the catalog we've recorded like 3 or 4 times. This final recording is more about getting everything perfect and getting it ready so we can send it off to a mix engineer. But like, this is, even though I consider this to be a demo, I think Tony and I have both sort of like accepted that this is the first album. No band that plays in bars and small clubs records before they start playing out. We've just gone this ass backwards route because he and I are both familiar with recording, and we were like, well, we should just put out an EP. And then like, it just made sense to us. But like, thinking about it after the fact, I was like, well, wait a minute. We're not tight enough to do this yet. Like, most bands have, 20, 30 performances under their belt before they even think about cutting a single. We have never played live together, save for at Open Jam, the couple of times we've ended up on stage together. So it's which by the way was a fun experience last time, because we played together and we were locked in, because it was like, well, we play together all the time. Like, this is no big deal. But it's, it's a challenge, and it's a different situation, and we're going to get through it. And hopefully by July or maybe August, we'll have an EP out and we'll have gigs booked. We're talking about 3 gigs for the fall, like late summer, fall. And we already sort of know where those are going to wind up being, because Tony has some connections to certain places. And some of those people have been calling him, asking like, when can you come in? So we know we can line up gigs. That's not going to be an issue for us. We've got enough like long-term connections to certain places that's probably going to work out. Some of them involve pretty large promoters in the area too. I won't say who they are, but if you reach out to me on the site, I can tell you, at least one of them. So there's that. And then in August, I think I announced in the last episode that I'm going to be playing Taste of Roselle again, which is a festival gig. It is not a big festival gig or anything, but we got a prime time spot. It's on a Friday night, on one of the biggest nights of August in my suburban area. So, it's going to be fun. We played it last year. We played during the afternoon. It was kind of a shitty gig because it was super hot, and like my iPad wound up overheating, if you recall, and it was like a whole thing. And I can remember there's actually video of this event, and like my playing was terrible because I was just like so distracted by all the other nonsense and minutia that led up to the event. But we got invited back, and we got invited back for a primetime spot. So obviously we did something right. And so this year, like, I'm going to take it a little bit more seriously, and I know what to expect going in. So it's probably going to be a much better gig than the last one was, because I won't be concerned with all the other crap that's going on. And not going to try. That was the first gig I think I took my PRS to, actually. And I think even that whole, like, that, when you got a big gig, don't try new shit. Do what works. And I was trying new shit. It's like, because I was just like, well, this band really doesn't matter all that much anyway, so I'll just play around and see what happens. But
and
now I'm kind of like
later.
2 years, well, a year later, yes, but like that's been going on for like 3 years now. I've been playing with that band, which is pretty wild. Like we started playing
a year since that last one.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that last.
No,
time.
I'm just saying we started.
Like, I don't care about this guy.
Oh, I was just going somewhere. I was saying we started playing in 2019, and I just keep saying like, oh, this band is not really. It's not my primary project, but it's the only consistent one. Like I get gigs every year to play with these guys, and I still kind of scratch my head. And we do get better. Like that's what's funny is even though we don't rehearse or anything, because we just play more together. The last gig we had was probably the best gig we ever had. And it was, and I didn't even have my whole, like, I didn't even bring my whole rig. I brought like a HX Stomp, and I had my my S500, and the lights were like buzzing real bad through it, and I was playing with Ottawa all night. But it was a fun like experience, and I think we were in front of the right crowd because we were opening for a Fish cover band. For me to like just kind of stretch out on some of these tunes, and they were all digging it. Like we were playing like folky protest tunes and stuff. Like we played This Land, and we played it like super slow, and there was like funk Ottawa going on and like heavy distortion, and it was because I'm just like, oh the hell with it, what are they gonna do, fire me? So I'm just like turning stuff on, and of course when I have that attitude, when I'm just like, fuck it, what are they gonna do, fire me? At the end of the show, they always come up and they're like, oh my god, that was so great what you did. And I'm like, but I thought you would, like, you told every time we're in rehearsal, and there've been on times on stage where Kyle comes over to me and he says, and he leans over and he says, can you do it with less drive? And I'm like, no. No. And every time I'm like, every show up, my drive goes up just a little bit more, right? And so like I think the show at the 2 shows ago, with the one we did, it was like an outdoor festival downstate at a campground, and he actually came up to me, he's like, it's a little too much drive. And I looked down at my board and I elbowed the bass player and I said, the fuzz is coming on in this next one. And it did too. I turned the fuzz on, and he just gave me this look like, and when the show was over, everybody's coming up to us, tell us how good it sounded, and like the guitar playing was excellent, whatever. And because like half the people in the audience don't even know that that's you generating that sound, right? So it's just like this whole like funny juxtaposition, right? And Kyle, I'm sure he's getting feedback from people who are like, just let him go, like just let him do his thing, like, so it is what it is, but. Yep. I guess that sort of fits for my gig report too, because I don't really have one this week. I'm gonna go ahead and switch the thing over, but that's my goals. I'm well on my track, except for the gear goal of not buying a bunch of pedals this year, which I haven't actually bought a bunch of pedals this year. I've sold more than I bought, believe it or not. I sold stuff and didn't replace it, didn't have something else in mind. So, there's that.
Yeah. So, gig report. Are we ready for that?
Yeah.
All right. Okay.
It's all lit up,
So-
man. It's all yours.
It's all mine. All right. So I'm gonna make this quick because we're over 2 hours now. So I'm gonna.
No, we're always
make it
over 2
quick.
hours, bro.
I know. I know. We always plan on. We never make.
It's like 2 hours and 30 minutes, 2 hours and 45 minutes.
We are the Leo Tolstoy or whatever of the whatever community here. YouTube community.
One thing before you go on, at least our episode count, like, sort of lines up with the fact that we've been doing this 5 years. Because we're this is 231, I think. So
yeah, this is for the listeners. Let me tell you something. This has been. I got a Facebook thing today that says you've been friends with David Hill for this long, and I'm
you're like, holy shit!
Oh my god, we've been doing this fucking podcast for so long. I was in my early 50s when we started.
Jim, we've been doing it so long that our podcast host doesn't have our initial statistics.
Yeah,
they're gone.
Yeah, and here's another thing, because his daughter, who's young, been growing up in the background in the whole thing, and I'm like, oh my god, she's gotten so tall. It's like when you see. Because she was a little thing.
I have a hell of a lot more gray hair. Let me tell you that.
I know. It's like it's so much. My hair is actually gray now.
I'm gonna hit 40. Graying. I'm gonna hit 40 while we're doing this podcast. It's gonna happen.
Yeah, and now my hair is gray, which is fine. I'm a silver-haired old man. Whatever. So anyway, gig report. We had a gig this week. Last week, whatever you want to call it, Saturday, a few days ago, on a campground, just like your campground thing. And campground gigs, let me tell you something. For people who think that these gigs, what are your best gigs? We have club gigs, you have festival gigs, you have campground gigs, you have concerts that people pay to see you. My favorite gigs are the ones they call them, and of course wedding gigs and that kind of thing, and corporate gigs. Those festival gigs, corporate gigs, wedding gigs, and that kind of thing, campground gigs, they all fall into this umbrella of your audience. You have a captive audience. They're there. They're stuck to see you. And I love captive audience gigs. I love them. And the campground was no exception. It was a blast. You have little kids. So at this campground we played, they have one of those bouncy house things.
Yeah, I think you did this campground last year.
Yes,
because you talked. It was a previous gig report. I remember that.
Yeah, and so we had this huge. They have this huge bouncy house thing that's like no house. It's just the bouncy floor, I guess. And they have these concrete seats, but most people sit on folding chairs. And then they have like a swimming pool behind us. And they have all the campground area where all the people are camping right there. It's like in a big swoop around us, right?
Right.
And then there's people pay extra to go where they can't hear us. No, I'm just kidding. And then they have these it's really kind of it's hard to believe, but it's only like a mile and a half off of the Virginia Beach proper. So like if you drove a mile and a half, you left the campground, went to the right, mile and a half, you're in the Atlantic Ocean at that point. So we're right there. And if you could see through the trees, you'd see the Atlantic Ocean right there. So you're right on the ocean. Okay.
Right.
But it's a heavily wooded area, which it's hard to believe that this heavily wooded area still exists on Virginia Beach, on the beach. And then there's Dam Neck Base down a little bit further. So just to give you an idea of where this campground is. So it's nice and cool in the evenings because you have that ocean breeze.
Yeah, the breeze comes through, right?
Yeah, and it's really nice. It's really well done, and you have literally thousands of people that are there. The place is packed. You could not get a camp. One of our guys tried to get one of the camper spots or one of the they have what do they call them, the little bungalow type things that they
cabins.
Cabins, thank you. And so nobody could get anything. This was packed. The staff is packed. They're working their butts off. And what's funny is they have a closing time, obviously, where they let everybody go to bed, but they don't really have a quiet time. Like, it has to be quiet at such time. They ask people to be quiet. So the cops show up during the gig, unbeknownst to us, for a noise complaint.
Of course.
And so they show up, and the cops come. And I had this happen to me at my house. Very similar outcome, too, by the way. Back when I lived in upstate New York, and I had a big 9-acre place up there. The cops show up, and it's funny because the campground's like, don't worry, we're done at 9:30. You know, we're gonna be quiet at that point. And the cops were like, no, this is a campground. You don't have a
curfew.
And then they go, it's like we just came by because we have to respond when somebody makes a complaint. And so the music is killer, rock on. And so they told us, and we were like, oh, I'm so sorry. And they were like, no, it's fine. As a matter of fact, it was funny. We're telling you because it was funny. And so they were like, we got to have you back. You are scheduled, right? In a couple of weeks. No. Well, we got a band that's backing out, so we need you back. So we're getting you back for that. And we had a gig already scheduled for later, so we're going to have a gig every month of the summer. So we're scheduled all the way through. And what's funny is this was opening weekend. This is opening day, right? Of the big, like, Memorial Day weekend is huge down here.
Right.
And so this is the big day, Saturday of Memorial Day weekend. And the place, just people were sitting there watching us the whole time, and they were like, no, play on, keep playing. They didn't want us to stop. And we had to have them. No, we got to stop. And they were like, one more song. Okay, you can do one more song. We were like, okay, we're gonna do Freebird. He goes, anything Freebird. Because they knew that it was gonna go for like an hour. So we did Can't You See? But
which if we did that one, because we play that one, if we do Can't You See, it goes on for like 20 minutes.
Yeah, we only did 2 verses of Can't You See. But what's funny is this is what it comes to. The place begging us to come back. The people I can't tell you how many people came up to us and said, I would pay to see this band live. You guys are that good. And this isn't one of those, everybody's drunk and it's, but we did so much work. And our lead singer, band leader, who's, by the way, that's the name of the band, is Fitch and Company. His name is in the title of the band. Tim went out and bought these, like, they're styrofoam. They look like pool noodles, but they're a lot smaller.
Right.
They're about that long. And they have little lights in them, and you just bang them to turn the lights on and off. And he gave 76 of them out to the kids.
Yeah.
To run around. And there were adults, there were kids, it was everybody. We sang happy birthday to like a 5-year-old. And you would have thought we made the family was all like, all of a sudden you realize why you do this stuff. It's because, it's because of that. It's because the adults, the kids, everybody was having fun. Little kids who loved Leonard Skinner and Bush just as much as they loved anything else we did. And it makes your heart feel better because that's what it's all about. At that point, that it's about, people loving what you do and appreciating what you do. And like I said, I watched footage back and I went, wow, that was better than last in my ears. And it just, it reminds you of why you're up there. And I get to feel that every time. And I don't underestimate or don't take for granted how good it feels to be a musician who brings joy to somebody's life, even if it's only for a few minutes. That's what it's all about. So that's my gig report, is how great this band and the audience makes me feel.
All right, before we close out here, I do want to mention, of course, we normally go to GearFest, and GearFest is actually not going to happen this year in person. So I want to give the dates, because we will be and of course, plug some other things for the podcast. So they'll be online, and they're going to be doing it online from June 24th and 25th. I mean, if you really care about new gear, you can watch it. There'll be probably all stuff that has already been announced at NAMM or around NAMM time. I don't expect that there will be anything exclusive from GearFest. And of course, as usual, if you have things you want, call up your rep, see if you can get a deal. I don't know how all that's going to work right now. I do think it's funny that they have partnered with 60 Cycle Hum, Know Your Gear, and other podcasts, except that, we've historically covered the in-person event longer than Know Your Gear and 60 Cycle Hum. So I just want to point that out. There's nothing. So I don't have bad feelings about that. I just think it's kind of funny.
Know Your Gear. Who is it? Oh, Phil McKnight.
Phil McKnight. So we've technically gone more times than 60 Cycle Hum, and we have been going longer than Phil McKnight. I think it's kind of funny that they partnered with them, but okay. I don't. Hey, we don't. That's really what it boils down to, is like, who's got the sales power. 60 Cycle Hum is clearly a sales podcast for the guitar world, more than it is a guitar, like just a straight guitar podcast, which we are more of that ilk.
Right.
So alternatively, the GearFest is not happening this year. Of course, NAMM's next week, so look for NAMM coverage. We have a Facebook group. Obviously, that's something we use. The pictures that are on the left-hand side here come from our Facebook group. If you want to submit pictures, you can do it there, or you can join our Discord. And there's details for that in the Facebook group. I will post those details in the comments, show notes for each episode from here on out. I am trying to encourage people to move to the Discord. There will be a future date where we probably finally sort of end the Facebook group, just because the terms of service are getting a little over the top, and I think we can manage a Discord better, in that we have more options and opportunities there, and we get to run it. So long term, right? That could be 2 years from now. So don't panic and be like, I gotta get off Facebook. But get used to the idea of using a Discord server, because you're going to see that more and more in these communities as Facebook groups becomes more and more intrusive in what you can and can't do. And Jim, you've been in Facebook jail several times, and you're not a bad you're not a bad guy, and you don't have insane personal beliefs.
You know what's funny? I never went to jail because I had some insane belief, or
it was because you said something that was like, somebody thought fictional. It was in jest, and somebody was like,
right,
that's a personal attack, and it's
I'll give you a prime example. I'm going to give you a real example. Someone had posted a picture of a toilet paper rolled the back way instead of the front way, and I said something like, somebody should beat that person who rolled the toilet. I said, because they said do this, and then I said somebody should beat. First of all, no one knows who rolled that toilet paper backwards. Second of all, it was say something that would be inappropriate. The most wrong answer wins, and so I was being the most wrong, and so it was like, take it in context.
I heard it from a coworker this week. They're Catholic, and they're in a Catholic Facebook group. It's a Facebook group for Catholics, and they were having a conversation about something dogmatic, and normal conversation for a group like that. And they got Facebook jail because apparently the group was not marked as private, so everybody could see the posts, and somebody didn't like something in the catechism that they said. I'm like, are you kidding me?
Yeah.
It's a group for before this. Like,
yeah, and then the last time I got banned was Elvis Presley. It was a picture of Elvis Presley when he was in the army. I'm gonna tell you straight up what I said. So Elvis Presley's in the army, and there's this guy standing there. He's with a bunch of people. They're all smiling because they're going to get a picture taken with Elvis, right?
Course,
which is
right.
awesome. It is so awesome, right? And so this one guy, he's really goofy looking. He's like, in the background, he's making a face like, and I probably on purpose because he's like, oh, look at me, I'm with Elvis.
He's in the army. They don't take just anybody.
Right. And so it's funny because, and then I said, it said, what is Elvis thinking in this picture? Best wrong answer wins. And I said, something about the goofy looking guy with the mule faced smile.
We'll get you, Steven.
Yeah. And I wrote that, and they gave me a 30-day ban because I wrote that Elvis was thinking. How the hell do I know what Elvis was thinking? I wasn't alive when Elvis went to Korea, and I'm like, oh God, and they said it was because I called the guy mule faced, and it's like that guy's probably not alive anymore. I mean, and if he is, he's old enough to be my grandfather, and he probably made that face on purpose because he was being silly. We used to do this, and we used to moon people, and guess what? Social media wasn't around, and we did silly things on pictures because it was funny, and we knew we were photobombing in the old days. So all of a sudden, I was like, you know what? Whatever. You can catch Steven. You can catch my music on my personal. You can go to Jimmy Woodard. Literally, that's me, Jim Woodard, in Facebook. I mean, I'm on Facebook, on YouTube. I don't hide behind a weird username and anything. I
do on Twitch.
Yeah.
I do Twitch live streaming too for music, so that's another avenue that I didn't listen to the chat.
Yeah. I do mostly cover stuff, so it's always no problem. I would have really appreciate that, Stephen.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I'm not like David. I haven't written a lot of original stuff, but I will say this: watch for more original stuff coming. Bitch and Company is going to start doing original stuff, so we're actually working through stuff.
I am so excited to hear some of that. Like, I'm like, yeah, let's do it. I want to hear the record.
Yeah, it'll be mostly all over the place, like 90s. I don't want to say grunge because it's not really. I guess it's post grunge. I don't know. And Americana. So what do they call it? Outline rocking country, but not like bro country at all. In any way, shape, or form. Yeah. So more like the fringe rock, country rock. The Southern rock, I guess you'd call it.
Yeah.
But post Southern rock? Is there such
a
thing?
It's modern Southern rock.
Yeah.
Yeah. So for our listeners, I do have an EP that's available on Apple Music and Spotify. It's called Ramblings of a Madman. It's listed under David M. Hill. And you can go check that out if you're interested. I have a live stream that I do over on Twitch. The name on that I will start putting in probably the comments section for the videos that we're doing. I think we're going to start doing live stream episodes from here on out. So if you'd like to come in and hang out while we're doing them, we'll try to do a good job of posting a heads up. We usually record at like 8 Central, 9 Central, on Sundays, but we may actually be adjusting that time because I know that both of us have to get up early on Mondays, and it kind of sucks because he's up till midnight or 1 o'clock in the morning, and I'm up till 11:30.
Yeah.
So we'll probably be adjusting that if we're going to continue to do live streams, but I look for that in the future for sure because this is going to be this has actually been a good experience and didn't really actually take any extra effort. So. Anyway, I've been David.
I've been Jim.
And tonight we've been Practical Guitars. Afternoon. Not tonight. this afternoon.
Yeah, this evening, this
Yes.
afternoon, evening, whatever it is.